Life of Fred, Financial Choices. Chapter 30. Insurance. Fred had just finished reading the last pages of Professor Eldwood's checklist of personal habits for success when he heard a knock on his office door. He knew that it wasn't the armed guard delivering another suitcase of money to Kingy, because he had just had a delivery. Fred was wrong. The guard had a second suitcase for Kingy. He had missed it in the armored truck when he had taken in the first suitcase. Normally, people don't get two suitcases of money on the same delivery. As the guard was leaving, a man in a suit walked up to Fred and said, "Are you Fred Gauss?" Fred nodded. "I'm your insurance agent." Fred was confused. "I don't have an insurance agent." "Yes, you do. My company has assigned me to all the faculty on this campus." This was perhaps not the best way to start a relationship. Most people like to think that they choose their agent, not get chosen by their agent. He continued, "May I have a few moments of your time to explain to you all the insurance policies that you need?" He walked into Fred's office, sat down at Fred's desk, and opened his briefcase. Fred went into deep think. It was a big question. Small essay. Who owns you? When you are a kid, your parents can decide when you need to turn out your lights and go to bed, what toothpaste you will use, and in some cases, whether you should be put to death. Deuteronomy 21:18-21. As an adult, the situation is a little different. The government will tell you which light bulbs you can use, no incandescents, which plants you can smoke, and whether you will face almost certain death in a military situation. Many people have a longer life expectancy on death row than in a gunfight in some far-off country in an undeclared war. There are 4 basic kinds of government, and they all are defined in terms of ownership. Very briefly, they are socialist, which is government owning the business; communist, the government owns everything, the businesses, your cars, your house. A fascist government is a government that claims that you own your stuff, but issues so many regulations and laws that in effect, they are running things. The nation is the supreme controlling boss in everyone's life. Freedom, which is the free market. You own your own stuff. You can sell it or trade it or use it to make money. You can make as much money as you like, and no one, including government, can take it from you. The only job that government has is to protect you from the force or fraud, which is lying, of others. You can do anything as long as you don't instigate aggression against others. Everyone who wants to control other people's property wants socialism, communism, or fascism. Other people produce, and you use the government to legally take it from them. That's called being a parasite. Everyone who is productive considers life and property to be their inalienable right. If they elect to give to others, it is true charity because it is voluntary. End of small essay. So Fred said to the insurance salesman, "I choose to give you 15 minutes of my time." This wasn't charity. Fred didn't know much about insurance. This would be a good way to learn. The insurance man began. First, let's start with auto insurance. As you know, the government requires each car owner to carry some insurance. Fred mentally translated this. The government is forcing me to buy something whether I want to or not. Fascism? Fred said, I don't own a car. What about life insurance? Everyone should have some. Fred asked, why? So that if you die, your relatives can get a bunch of money. Fred tried to think of who his needy relatives were. Kingy surely didn't need an extra suitcase full of money. Fred shook his head. What about homeowners insurance? Do you own a home? Fred shook his head again. Then you must need renter's insurance to protect all the things that you own. Fred looked around his office. He had a lot of books, his jogging clothes, and the food in his desk. The books were worth about $500. His jogging clothes were almost rags. He had jogged many miles in them. The food in his desk was covered with ants. The agent took out a big poster. We will protect all your valuables against tsunamis, earthquakes, and penguin attacks. The agent said, only $3 for every $1,000 of protection. Fred had several questions. Isn't a tsunami a giant sea wave? Aren't we in Kansas, 1,000 miles from the ocean? Aren't big earthquakes mostly on the West Coast? You got to admit, the agent said, our rates are really low. Penguin attack? Are they going to migrate all the way from the South Pole and climb the 2 flights of the math building and eat my books? How about insurance from fire and tornado damage? The agent grinned. Those are special add-ons and cost a lot more. Quickly, he changed the subject and said, getting insurance is something that every responsible person needs to do. Fred played with that sentence in his head. That means that if I'm responsible, then I should get insurance. That means if I don't buy insurance, then I'm not a responsible person. That feels like a lie. Fred said, well, your 15 minutes are up. Goodbye. The agent left after putting his business card on Fred's desk. In terms of good financial choices, insurance can be a good thing if you buy it wisely. The reason for insurance is to protect you from financial catastrophe. A single dad with 3 young kids probably needs life insurance until he has created a good fortune, as Jane Austen called it. His death would be a financial catastrophe. On the other hand, the death of any of his kids would not have a large financial impact. If you have a decent amount of assets, then insurance to protect against lawsuits, valid or frivolous, is necessary in American society. Part of auto insurance, for example, provides some lawsuit protection. When you buy a gadget in a store and they offer an extended warranty, you should decline it. They are offering insurance for something that would not be a financial catastrophe. An insurance deductible is the amount you pay before the insurance company pays. With a $4,000 loss, a $500 deductible means that you would receive $3,500 from the company. Higher deductibles means lower rates. Choose the highest deductible that wouldn't be a financial catastrophe for you to pay. It's been a while since we've had a Your Turn to Play. Please get out a piece of paper and write your answers before you peek at my answers on the next page. Please. So, number 1. There are psychological barriers to getting or keeping a good fortune. If you have been told all your life that the best that you can hope for is being a store cashier or a secretary, what should you do? You can pause the video for a few seconds to answer that, and then we'll come back to the answer. So the answer to number 1 is, that's easy. Don't believe them. There are zillions of people who have risen from trailer park to mansion. Many of the super rich have earned their fortunes rather than have inherited them. Read their biographies as an antidote to the poison of you can't make anything of yourself. All right, back to the questions. Number 2, which of these offers the most happiness points? A, gaining $1 million and having your net worth go from 49 million to 50 million, or B, gaining an extra $800 and being able to now pay the rent. So A or B? The answer is B, by gaining the $800. In mathematics, we say that happiness points are not a linear function of dollars received. If you double your income, you do not automatically double your happiness. Going from 49 million to 50 million probably won't change what you eat, what you wear, or where you live. All right, number 3. Which of these is important in earning a good fortune? A, feeling or knowing that there is nothing wrong with having lots of money. B, having sufficient startup capital before starting your chosen business. C, being willing to take appropriate risks. D, knowing that money is not just going to fall in your lap without serious effort. E, being willing to make that effort. Or F, all of the above. I think most of you know the answer to that is simply F. Okay. Question number 4. Your insurance agent offers an add-on to your auto policy. For a little extra cost, you can get towing if your car is disabled. Yes or no? No. Don't insure for things that you can handle yourself. Paying the cost of a tow won't put you into poverty. Question number 5. You are offered hospital insurance. If you are hospitalized, the company pays the bills. Yes or no? Yes. Stays in the hospital often cost thousands of dollars a day. 3 days in the hospital and the bill might be $21,931.07. This is not unusual. Many bankruptcies are because of medical expenses. Here, it is important to shop around and compare what different insurance companies offer. The terms and prices will vary. And number 6, hard question. You buy auto insurance for your new $50,000 car that will pay you if your car is damaged in a collision. Suppose you have the choice between a $200 deductible and a $1,000 deductible. You choose the $1,000 deductible because your rates will be cheaper, and this is the largest available deductible you can afford. There is another reason to choose the $1,000 deductible. Name it. Number 6 answer. Suppose your car door is slightly dented. The repair would be $300. If you have a $1,000 deductible, the insurance company will not owe you anything. You just go and get it fixed. and pay the $300. But if you only have a $200 deductible, you need to file a claim with the company for the $100 they will owe you, and you will have to follow the insurance company's procedures to determine the amount of damages. They don't just write you a check for the $100. It can be hours of paperwork and hassle for that $100. All right, chapter 31. Alternatives. Fred went back to working on his future business of founding a university. He was surprised at how many decisions he would have to make. Some were big decisions, such as where he would locate Fred's university. Some were small, such as what brand of chalkboard or whiteboard he would put up in each classroom. Most of the small decisions, as to chalkboards, chairs, and curtains, could be put off until a year before opening day. But a lot of things depended on where he would locate his university. It was a decision he would have to make sooner rather than later. Fred did a lot of reading about places in the United States and in other countries. There were 10 factors he wanted to consider. Climate, prices for renting space or for buying existing universities, earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, the number of students and ability to pay, the local government regulations, crime rates, the local taxes his university would have to pay, competition from other local universities, availability of teachers, small town versus big city. Initially, Fred started with 170 possible locations. He knew that it would take years to decide if he were to investigate all 10 factors for each of the 170 locations. The math, 10 times 170 equals 1,700 research projects. It seemed to Fred like there were 170 doors that were open to him, and they all looked good. The weather might be great in one spot, but there might be too many local government regulations there. In another spot, there might be a need for higher education, but getting teachers might be more difficult. Fred didn't want to close any doors. Story time. Once upon a time, there was a guy who loved onion rings. That was the only food that he would eat. One day, he was really hungry. He sat down for lunch at the dining room table. There were 2 plates of hot onion rings. They were each 5 feet away from him, one on his left and one on his right. He looked at the left plate. It looked delicious. He looked at the right plate. It looked delicious. If there had only been one plate, he would have eaten it in 20 seconds. He had too many options. He couldn't decide. He starved to death. The end. Fred had too many options to choose among. If there are 2 options, you choose between. If there are more than 2, then you choose among them. If he waited until he knew everything about all 170 locations, he would be an old man. And there's a picture of Fred at 115. One big barrier to super success is a psychological aversion to making decisions that closes off any of our alternatives. It hurts to eliminate any option. But if you don't close some doors, you end up like the guy with the onion rings. Which major in college do you choose? The student who just can't decide winds up with a double or sometimes triple major and takes forever to get through college. I am a French lit and chem major, says the little guy. You love playing the piano and dream of being a concert pianist. You know that you will have to practice 5 hours a day to achieve that goal. You also love baseball and dream of becoming a professional baseball player. Another 5 hours a day. You also have to have the urge to be a missionary in Kuala Lumpur, which is the capital of Malaysia. The marriage ceremony is your announcement to the world that you are closing doors, that you will be true to one other person. 100 lifetimes would be much too short to do everything and to see everything. Sorry, that's reality. You've got to close doors, regardless of how painful that will be. If you don't, you will not really succeed in anything. And now the argument for the other side. Don't close too many doors. What does success mean? Does it mean that you will have the most famous pizza restaurant in the world, or the most money, or the presidency, or the best wife, husband? You can be in the top 1 or 200 people in the world in almost any category, given reasonable talent and insanely concentrated work habits. But in the last hour before your death, you might be thinking about whether you really lived a life. Was it worth it to achieve the top and hate your life? Have gone through 4 spouses, not been a good parent to your kids, and not really had many close friends? You don't need to live an unbalanced life in order to retire in 24 years. You can still be there when your kids are growing up, celebrate your spouse, take some time to putter, and have a hobby that renews you. You can do all of these things and put in 40 to 60 hours a week toward your career goal and still get 8 hours of sleep each night. The trick is not to waste time. It's not wasting time if you have a hobby that clears your mind and enables you to balance work and play. It's not wasting time if you spend an hour sharing with your loved ones the fears, the hopes, and the dreams that each of you have. It's not wasting time if you share with God the fears, the hopes, and the dreams that you have. Each of us individually knows when we are wasting time and running away from life, doing the things that just avoid engagement. What might be wasting time for one person might be central in another's life. For example, learning that this huge algebra problem is the solution to ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Studying the history of Armenia, mastering the new computer-driven sewing machines, riding a horse in the park, watching quiz shows on TV, making silly lists. Fred knew that he would get nowhere if he retained 170 locations on his list. If he eliminated one of them, that could be eliminating the very best one. But he had to close doors. He had to take the risk. He plunged. He picked the climate factor. He eliminated places that were too cold. That crossed off spots in Maine. He eliminated places with too much rainfall. That eliminated Quinault, Washington, which had an average annual rainfall of 115.62 inches. That's about an inch of rain every 3 days on the average. He eliminated places that had more than 30, 90-degree days a year. Fred narrowed the list down to 31 places. Then he crossed off those that had frequent hurricanes, floods, and tornadoes. He was now down to a manageable 7 spots. 2 of them were in high crime areas. He was now down to 5 possible places for the Fred's University. This was painful work. He liked Quinault for a lot of reasons. He liked Kansas spots, but they were gone with the wind.